Now, over the past few days, since the Season 3 finale of The Mandalorian, which there will be major spoilers for in this video, so do be warned if you haven't seen it. Anyway, over the past few days, I've seen a lot of people putting the theory out there that maybe it wasn't the real Moff Gideon we saw in these past 2 episodes. That maybe it was simply a clone of his who was killed in the finale when Axe Wolves crashed a ship into the secret Imperial base on Mandalore. Which, to me, sounds like one of the worst theories ever for a couple different reasons, not the least of which being that this probably shouldn't even be classified as a theory when you consider just how painfully obvious that possibility is, with there being clones of him right there on the base that look just like him, right down to the missing mustache, which isn't to say that, the real Gideon couldn't have just shaved his off at some point. But anyway, yes, I'd imagine most people who watched the finale thought that or realized that, like it or not, there was a chance that wasn't the real Gideon. I mean, the only strong evidence against the possibility of it being a clone was the fact that the Gideon we saw fight and die didn't seem to be Force sensitive, and we know the clones are supposed to be. Though I suppose there's nothing to say that the Gideon we saw wasn't a non-Force sensitive clone, or one that just hadn't learned how to use the Force effectively yet. After all, it usually does require some degree of training to actively use it in combat and such. Or it's also possible this was just an earlier test version of Gideon, made before they had Grogu's blood and could start making Force-sensitive versions. A kind of proof of concept, you could say, before they went into mass production with Grogu's blood implemented. Which I'm not saying I think or hope is the case, not at all. In fact, that's another reason why this is one of the worst theories ever, because it should not happen. As much as I initially liked the character of Moff Gideon, and at many points I've even called him the best villain of the Disney era, which admittedly isn't the greatest achievement ever. Anyway, as much as I like him, I certainly don't want him back now. I don't want another character to somehow return, even though, yeah, it could easily be explained, unlike certain other returns. Though, actually, when you really think about it, this being a clone of Gideon would explain why the character felt so generic now. Not that he was ever some elaborate and complex villain, but in the first 2 seasons, he at least felt like he was or could be. There felt like a ton of potential there, and Giancarlo Esposito just had this cool, menacing way about playing the character, without it feeling too over the top or hammy, you could say. Which is why him in the 3rd season was such a letdown, in my opinion at least, because I expected there to be finally something more revealed about him after 3 seasons of being our big bad overarching villain. Something more than just wanting to make Force-sensitive clones of himself that he put in Dark Trooper armor to take over the remnants of the Empire, I guess. Even though something tells me that unless there are inhibitor chips in their heads or something, a means by which to control them, you'd almost think that the first thing a Force-sensitive clone of Moff Gideon would do is take over for the real Moff Gideon, which almost sounds like it could be more evidence for this being a clone. But let's not think about that. Instead, I'll point out that it's not like there wasn't the opportunity to do something with him this season, something more. When you really think about it, there wasn't much of a reason to turn his current status into this strange sort of mystery about him maybe being dead, or maybe being alive, or who knows what else the New Republic had or was going to do with him. I mean, Giancarlo Esposito had confirmed long ago he was going to be in the season, so why not bring him in early and show him pulling the strings behind all of it? Why not show that he was the one who launched the attack on Bo-Katan's castle and had it destroyed? Because even though I think we can assume that was him, or that he would give such an order, we don't know for sure, and it would have been far more impactful, no pun intended, to see him leading the attack, to see him in one of those bombers. We've seen him fly a TIE fighter before. In my opinion, that was the perfect way to reveal him in the season, to show that he either wasn't done with Bo-Katan, or maybe done with the Mandalorians on the whole because he wanted revenge on them for some reason or another. I don't know, I think him leading that bombing attack would have been better than this strange mystery scene at the end of an episode, where Captain Teva somehow randomly finds the shuttle that was transporting him, then finds a shard of Beskar on it and makes us wonder if the Mandalorians broke him out for some reason. And what they did with him overall, or should I say didn't do with him overall, is especially confusing because we learn Bo-Katan's side of the story. We hear her talk about how she made a deal with Gideon, that she turned over the Darksaber to him to spare her people, and was betrayed. that he still killed them or attacked Mandalore, yet, interestingly enough, didn't seem to destroy the moon of Concordia where Death Watch was. And so, instead of making him just the classic mustache-twirling villain who does evil things because he does evil things, who broke the deal with Bo-Katan because he wanted to break the deal with her and kill a bunch of people, make it where he had some sort of personal vendetta against Bo-Katan all along. Have it be where he was a young member of Death Watch back during the Clone Wars that she never knew or cared existed, and he went off with Maul after the split, after previous love was killed, and he blames her for the fall of Death Watch shortly thereafter, or it splintering, and he wanted revenge, or wanted to cleanse all of Mandalore and remake it, which begins to explain why his new Dark Trooper helmet that he was wearing looked like a Mandalorian helmet and had horns on it in honor of Darth Maul's clan. And no, they of course didn't have to go with something quite so contrived or obvious or on the nose. There could be any number of reasons why Gideon would hate either Bo-Katan or the Mandalorians. A lot of reasons why he'd want to see them destroyed, which could even tie back into, say, the Clone Wars and why he eventually joined the Empire and worked himself up the ranks to become a Moff. Again here, we're talking about basically the only villain the show had over 3 seasons, and I feel like he only got worse and less interesting along the way. And I don't want him brought back or for it to have been a clone in order to try and rectify his poor exit from the series or his poor building of a character. At some point, dead really needs to mean dead in Star Wars, or it's going to get truly laughable, if it hasn't already with how many characters keep coming back. And speaking of coming back, not that he was ever confirmed to be dead, but they are bringing back Thrawn in the Ahsoka series after first showing up in the canon in Rebels. And I sure hope they have a hell of a plan for him going into all this. I hope they can make him at least close to as interesting as he was not only back in the day, but also with what's recently been done with him in the 2 new trilogies of books in the new canon by Timothy Zahn, the original creator of the character, where he's been shown to be anything but a mustache-twirling villain who does evil things because he's evil, where he's not even a villain at all, but rather is entirely motivated by wanting to help and protect his people, which is even the reason why he joined the Empire in the first place. And though I know a lot of people out there enjoy The Mandalorian because it is a bit more on the simple and fun side of things, I see a lot of people say they like it because it feels more akin to classic Star Wars, which is all well and good. Don't get me wrong, you can like it and not be bothered by Gideon never amounting to much in the series. You can watch a show for whatever reason you want. But for fans of Thrawn, and there are a lot of them, that approach won't work. They'll have to bring their A game to write him, or their and/or game, you could say, with him being a character that is always a step or 2 ahead of everyone else around him, and he doesn't do anything without first having a reason. He's not the type to make a clone army of himself and put them in mech suits because it's cool. He's the type who figures out someone else's simple plan like that and then thwarts it with ease, which is part of the reason why I was almost hoping someone was working for Thrawn in all of this. That there was some sort of spy and that he, Thrawn, wanted Gideon eliminated and was doing it without breaking a proverbial sweat. But nope, it was just the 3rd time our heroes defeated Gideon. The 3rd time a season ended with our heroes defeated Gideon. He may have been an interesting character with a ton of potential that I'd like to see fleshed out somewhere, maybe in a book or comic or something. The last thing I want is to see him again and for it to have only been a clone that was killed and to be defeated for a 4th time. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Were you disappointed in Gideon this season? Do you think that was a clone of him that we saw killed and the real one is still out there doing something and will return at some point? Or do you really hope that is not the case at all and Gideon is gone for good? Whatever you think, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.